Churches get serious about security in the light of recent threats, and ISIS fighters around the globe renew their commitment to murder and mayhem. All that and more is coming up on today's Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, it's another beautiful day out here in Reno, Nevada. I'm at my mom's house where I've been for the past week or so, caring for her. She's got pancreatic cancer, and I really appreciate all the prayers and messages of support that you all have been sending. Mom's comfortable, and this week she'll start the treatment. Doctors are telling us it could prolong her life by months or even years, so we're hopeful, and we hope you'll keep praying. Well, churches across the United States are getting serious about the security in their congregations as they realize that they're at risk from the next whackjob with a grudge who's looking for a soft target. Last week I saw news that some Jewish synagogues in the United States are doing actual active shooter drills during services to keep all their folks on their toes. That might sound crazy, but we actually filmed this short dramatization at the end of one of our church services in Beckley, West Virginia a few years ago. Check it out.
With all the crazy stuff going on in the world, I regularly get calls from churches all over the country that say, how do we get started with the church security program? What kinds of things do we need to do? What kind of resources are out there to help us get things going? That's what we're about. Our desire is to make sure that you have the understanding and the resources available for you to help protect your flock, because the fact of the matter is protecting your flock should be at the top of your list.
The development of a church security program or plan is something that's dynamic and individual to every church. In today's day and age, speaking biblical truth makes you a target. Security teams have to plan ahead and know what they're going to do in those situations before they happen.
If a violent incident occurred in your church tomorrow, what would you wish you had done?
Okay, so that's West Virginia, but now this is happening in Philadelphia and other places, and none too soon if you ask me. On June 19th, a 21-year-old Syrian refugee living in Pittsburgh was arrested for trying to provide material support for terrorism to ISIS. He was also attempting to radicalize others. His name was Mustafa Musab Alawener, and he planned to attack a Pittsburgh church, according to court documents, with explosives in an attempt to inspire ISIS supporters in the United States to do more similar attacks.
On June 18th, the U.S. Attorney's Office filed a criminal complaint against Mustafa Alawener, charging him with 2 violations of federal criminal law. First, providing material support for a foreign terrorist organization, and second, distributing plans to create an explosive device. Today, Mr. Alawener appeared in federal court. A federal judge ordered him to remain in custody without bail pending trial, and the judge also found there's sufficient evidence for the charge to be held over for trial.
Once again, we see a peaceful congregation of worshipers targeted simply because of their faith. The Federal Bureau of Investigation cannot and will not let this stand in a country that holds the free exercise of religion as one of its most basic freedoms.
As we know, the threat posed by terrorist organizations is real, and they're reaching across our borders to spread their ideologies of hate. And we want those who embrace these ideologies of hate to know that we will find you, we will prosecute you, and we will bring you to justice.
As you are certainly aware, countering terrorism remains a top priority for the FBI. In Southwest Pennsylvania, across the United States, and all around the world. Since October of 2018, the FBI has arrested more than 60 international terrorism subjects, and at any given time we have approximately 5,000 international terrorism cases open. The purpose of those cases is to aggressively identify and address threats to the homeland in any form. While these threats vary in scope, we are increasingly concerned with the widespread use of technology and social media by groups like ISIS to recruit supporters, spread the message of hatred, and inspire misguided acts of violence.
That's not the first time this sort of aspiration was thwarted by the FBI. He was following through with that plan when he distributed DIY plans to conduct IEDs. Praise God, he was actually sending the plans to an undercover agent. As late as June of 2019, he was distributing ISIS propaganda and tried to identify potential targets in the Pittsburgh area. Demonstrating his intentions, he made a martyrdom video pledging support to the leader of ISIS, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and requested a silencer, telling the agent he planned to kill people quietly in the beginning of his attack as he approached his target.
It was actually really scary because I have a lot of younger siblings who live in the house down the street, and just if this was to actually go through and happen, that would have been more detrimental than I could ever imagine.
A lot to look at there. There have been enough of these attacks around the globe now that nobody can make a serious case that churches aren't at risk. And if you're a churchgoer, make sure your leadership is taking security seriously. Full disclosure, I'm on the board of Lionheart International Services Group, which is a company that does church security training. For all my podcast subscribers, I'm sending out links to our church security video training series. So head on over to patreon.com/hotzone and subscribe to support the podcast, and you'll get those and lots of other goodies as well. All right, I'm sure you heard about the earthquakes in California last week, and for a quake that was measured above 7, I really have to say it's amazing there wasn't more damage and injuries. A quake like that in many countries would result in thousands of dead and wounded from collapsed buildings and such. Haiti comes to mind. Last week in Medellin, Colombia, there was a 4-story building that collapsed all by itself. No quake needed. File this under reasons why building codes are a good thing. Fortunately, only 6 people were believed to have been in the building, and at least 3 of them have already been found alive. Praise the Lord for that. In Haiti, back in 2010, where building codes were all but non-existent, when the earthquake hit, in some places, 90% of the buildings collapsed in a matter of seconds. 250,000 people died. To get a sense of the devastation in the capital city of Port-au-Prince, I traveled around to some of its landmarks, which I'd visited while reporting from Haiti in late 2008. What I found was horrific. More than a week after the quake, city streets were clogged with debris, and the smell of death lingered where corpses were being dug from the rubble. The last time I visited Haiti's National Catholic Cathedral, it was one of the few well-kept buildings in the city. A service was in progress then, with several hundred people in attendance. A similar service was going on when the earthquake hit, and today, those parishioners lay entombed in the rubble. Nearby, the whitewashed presidential palace stood as an icon for the country. Now, its crumbling ruins give testament to the fact that this tragedy was no respecter of position or wealth. Indeed, it may be that the poor fared somewhat better than the rich in this country where the divide between the two has always been so vast. The luxurious 4-star Hotel Montana, where I stayed on my last trip, was completely destroyed in the quake, and nearly 200 Westerners perished inside. The people of Port-au-Prince are slowly rebuilding their lives, but for a place like the Hotel Montana, they might rebuild it, but it'll never be the same. This well-known park in the neighborhood of Pétionville, near the Montana, became an open-air campground after the quake. Today, it's packed with people too afraid to sleep indoors. Many of them have lost everything.
We need water, we need food, we need everything.
How long will you stay here? When will you go back to your homes?
I don't know. Only God knows.
A feeding center set up at a police station overlooking the park nearly became a riot when the food ran out before everyone got fed. Incidents of aid being stolen are becoming more frequent as the Haitian people become more desperate and frustrated. Nobody here knows how long it'll be before Haiti can begin rebuilding, but they can't wait forever. The rainy season begins in mid-February. Chuck Holton, CBN News, Port-au-Prince, Haiti. So as much as building inspectors and permits and such are a pain in the backside, if you ask me, this is the reason that they're needed. So from one disaster to another, In Greece, wildfires have forced the evacuations of several villages, and that's not really international news, but I just wanted to mention it because we have this awesome footage of a couple of firefighting planes swooping in and dumping water on the fires. Those are some pretty amazing pilots, if you ask me. All right, now let's talk about ISIS. We've talked a lot in the past about how the Islamic State might be kaput as a country, but it's definitely still around as a global terror organization. In Khorasan province, that's Afghanistan, ISIS fighters are claiming responsibility for an increasing number of attacks and recently released a 12-minute video pledging allegiance to Abu Akbar al-Baghdadi. They've done several of those this year, featuring bad guys in Syria, the Philippines, and lots of other places. Originally believed to be from Samarra, Iraq, al-Baghdadi has since been the leader of ISIS since 2010, even before it was called the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Back then, he presided over the rise of one of the most brutal and publicity-savvy terror groups in modern history. And his many escapes from assassination or capture by Western governments have earned him the nickname the Invisible Sheikh or the Ghost. Now, in reality, we had this guy in our hands back in 2004 when he was arrested and sent to Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq for about 9 months. But we let him go along with a bunch of other prisoners who were deemed to be low risk. Many of those guys also ended up being leaders with ISIS, so great job, U.S. intelligence. Since getting crushed in Syria, ISIS has lived on through tens of thousands of jihadis around the world. And that's because ISIS isn't an organization so much as an idea, kind of like anarchy. You can kill the followers, but you'll have a hard time killing the idea itself. Now, take the fact that there are still tens of thousands of ISIS brides languishing in camps in Syria where their Kurdish caretakers don't have the money or the manpower to care for them. Many of these women are still diehard believers and claim that ISIS in Syria is going to rise again just as soon as their kids get raised. Here at this collection point, those who can make it here have been walking to this point where they're processed by the Syrian Defense Forces and they're then moved to further side inland. This 19-year-old woman is a French citizen who came with her mother to join ISIS when she was only 15.
I came in 2015 with my mother and my sister to live in the Khilafah. And after this I want to escape, but they ask a lot of money, and my family in French, they scared to send the money. There is no food, no nothing. No food, no. We was living in the tent. No electricity, never electricity, nothing. I want to go back to my country.
Buses come every afternoon to take these women and children to a camp several hours away. Any men who surrender are assumed to be ISIS fighters and are taken to a detention facility. Families who arrive too late are forced to spend the night here in the desert. The light is almost gone out here, and we're still hearing fighting going on a couple kilometers away. But the more pressing emergency right now is that there are maybe a couple hundred people out here behind me in this just desert. They got dumped off here after escaping from ISIS, but they're going to have to spend the night out here. Last night it was about 30 degrees, and people could die out here. I'm just watching them as they try to prepare for what they know is coming. It's already below 40, I would say. Clear sky. It's going to be extremely cold here tonight. And there are these holes that were dug in the earth to be used as slit trenches, as bathrooms. And what they're doing is going in and cleaning out all the excrement and throwing it out, and they're going to sleep in there tonight because it's at least out of the wind. Many of these people are injured as well. It's just hard to imagine. We've given away all the blankets we had. I gave away my warm socks. We're trying to figure out a way to help these people as much as we can, but it's just a drop in the ocean. And so I'm just not sure what else we can do. Germany, for one, has started to prosecute some of these women for war crimes. There's a 27-year-old German citizen who's in court right now being charged with a host of crimes, including the murder of a 5-year-old Yazidi girl whom the ISIS woman and her husband bought as slave and then ended up chaining to the house or something outside the house and leaving her out there to die of exposure. Now, let me just say, these people need to get prosecuted. They need to pay the price for their crimes. And I was there in February in Syria treating many of these women. They were wounded as they came out of Deir ez-Zor and Baghouz and those places. And, you know, it was a real challenging decision to make when you see these people and you know they're diehard ISIS supporters, but yet they're hurting, they're hungry, they're thirsty, and I just had to go back to what the Bible had to say about it and give them some water. So that's all I've got for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I hope you'll stick around and come back again tomorrow. We'll have lots of good stuff this week coming up for you. So I'm Chuck Holton, and you've been watching The Hot Zone.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.